This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Okay, let's start. Sorry, I immediately when we started my throat got stuck. But let's play this game called Cancel or Keep. So let's do the first prompt. Standing desks for productivity.
Keep.
Counting macros instead of intuitive eating.
Cancel.
Yeah. Meditation apps instead of therapy.
Cancel.
Prescription weight loss drugs like Ozempic.
Cancel.
Okay, so we canceled almost everything. But that was great. Welcome, Geoffrey. I'm so excited to have you on the podcast. You guys know the drill. This is Fully Managed. You know me. I'm your host, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator, Daniela. And you guys know what we talk about here, too. We talk about marketing, talk about business tips, and we help assist you guys with your business journeys. We have a really cool guest today, Geoffrey Kent. Hi, Geoffrey. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to have you on the podcast today. Looking forward to a great chat. But to get the ball rolling, get everything started, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, anything that our viewers and our listeners have to know in case they're not familiar?
Yeah. Well, I guess to give you the kind of the brief resume, I am a military brat. My dad's career Air Force. He's about to turn 98 years old. Suffers from dementia. Mom's about to turn 94. She'll turn 94 tomorrow, actually. So I try to spend as much time with them as I can while they're still here on Earth. So today, as we speak, I'm actually in their home. I try to find a quiet place in their home to talk to you. But let's see. Outside of that, I am a serial entrepreneur. Over 5 decades, I've launched more than 20 successful ventures. I sold my last business. It was a private cloud computing business. I sold it 12 years ago. And I've spent the last 12 years just mentoring other entrepreneurs, showing them how to do what I was able to do for most of my ventures, but particularly with that last venture. It's a venture that in 6 years, I took it from, I launched it from zero, exponentially scaled it to a desired exit, sold the business, 6 years after I launched it. And through that and other transactions, other entrepreneurial transactions, have been able to secure my own individual, future and create generational wealth for my family. So I actually have a methodology that I go about doing what I do. And so now, I spend my time teaching other entrepreneurs how to, customizing a success formula to their strengths and likes. I attended the University of Oklahoma undergrad, majored in marketing, minored in accounting, started my career in corporate America with Xerox and AT&T in sales. 11 years into my career, decided that, I could do more with my career if I had an MBA. So stopped and went to the Wharton School of Business, got an MBA and triple majored in international business, entrepreneurial management, and sports and entertainment management. Post MBA, had the opportunity to work with Julius Dr. J. Irving, the basketball player, for 2 years, and then went to Deloitte Consulting for 6 years. And then at the age of 41, while I was doing very well in corporate America, I was not happy. And I was dabbling in entrepreneurship part time, failing at it miserably, but I was incredibly happy with everything I was doing entrepreneurially. So I decided at 41 to basically prioritize being happy over being wealthy, and left Deloitte and decided to pursue entrepreneurship full time. And everything that I have touched entrepreneurially since I left corporate America has turned into gold. So it was one of the best decisions I've ever made.
I think what's most inspiring is that had the guts, I think, to leave. I feel like there are so many people that are stuck in corporate America, or just in general, jobs that they don't like, because they're afraid of taking that plunge to things like that. Um, I mean, with reason. I don't think that their fears are completely crazy,
Yeah,
but yeah, I think talking to people like yourself who have been able to do it can be great, because I think sometimes what we lack is direction and
yeah,
focus and understanding of what you can do within your constraints and your reality to actually make something worthwhile, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, you do need a support system. You need a plan B. Um, I was um, I was married at the time, so I lost my wife to heart disease 4 years
I'm
ago.
sorry.
Thank you. But I so I hadn't been married all that long. We had been married probably 6 years, and our youngest, or my oldest. I have two daughters who are now in their 20s, but my oldest was one when I made this choice. So newly married with a 1 year old, not the easiest thing to do. But fortunately, my wife was, right, had her own career, and was making good money. And so, I sat down and had the discussion with her, and it's like, hey, I hate what I'm doing, and I'm thinking about making a move. What do you think? And I would have stayed in corporate America if she you know completely resisted it. But interestingly enough, it just goes to show you how perceptive some other people are. Sometimes you're too deep in the forest to see the trees. And well, when we had this conversation, she's like, "Jeff, you know, you hate what you're doing, and I can see that." She's like, Every time you do something entrepreneurially, your eyes light up." She's like, "If I were you, I'd quit your job and pursue entrepreneurship." I'm like, "Okay, I'm not the person you give rope to, because I will try to leave." So, like, I had if I had that conversation with her on a Friday, I went into work on Monday and resigned. You know, I'm that kind of person. You absolutely do not want to challenge me, because I will we could take you up on it.
No, that's amazing. What I wonder is, how were you actually able to make everything? I mean, I know it's like a process. I'm assuming that it takes a while, but what are like the actionable steps that you actually had to take towards making something, profitable and worth like the investment for it to start to see the returns? I know I can imagine it took a few years or maybe a few months,
Mhm.
but what were those actual steps that you had to make in order to say like, okay, let me start doing my own business and being an entrepreneur full time?
Yeah. Well, so by the time I got so at 41 and I'm doing this, I had tried other entrepreneurial things, right? So I had just done them part time. So fortunately for me, this wasn't, my first go around on the rodeo. So I understood what entrepreneurship was all about. I just hadn't done it full time. Um, so having that prior knowledge, having failed, again, and this is part of the entrepreneurial journey. You as a prospective entrepreneur hear about successful entrepreneurs, and you just assume that, oh, they he did something, everything clicked as overnight success, no such thing. You know, if you dig into every one of their stories, you'll find that there's quite a bit of trial and tribulations associated with getting to the point where everybody hears their success. you know,
Takes 10 years to be an overnight success. Like,
yeah,
not
yeah. Well, the thing is, when you're successful, everyone wants to be around you. Everyone wants to hear your story. So you're getting all this, notoriety and publicity when you're successful. But when you're not successful, or when you're leading up to that, no one wants to talk to you. So the reason you don't hear about these stories is no one is interested in talking to you when you're struggling to get to your success. It's only when you get successful that they want to talk to you, which gives everyone else the impression that, oh, well, I didn't hear about this person yesterday. I'm hearing everything about this person now. This must just have just happened. But you don't hear about the 10, 20, 30 years of toil and tribulation that they went through to get to that point where now you're hearing about them. So again, for me, having already, I had probably launched 15 ventures before I was 41. So I knew what to do as an entrepreneur. Um, what I, so the first venture I ran full time succeeded. You know, every single venture I've launched post corporate America has succeeded. They've just been more successful each time around, right? Because I learned from the failures, right? So one thing you definitely don't want to do as an entrepreneur, when you make a mistake, you just don't want to repeat it. It's okay to make mistakes. You're going to make mistakes. You just don't want to repeat mistakes. So you have to stop, learn the lessons that the mistake is giving you, apply that to the next venture to make sure you don't make that same mistake again. You're going to make another mistake. Just don't make the same mistake, right? So I had all of that, kind of in my back pocket, once I had decided to do this full time. Now it's more I'm doing less of, figuring out what to avoid and really kind of honing in on my strengths more so. So each venture at that point, it's how do I become more successful? What can I enhance? What can I invest more of my time in to be more successful in the next venture, right? And ultimately, I came up with there is a formula for entrepreneurial success, right? I tell entrepreneurs this all the time. There have been millions of successful entrepreneurs in the history of mankind, right? And every one of those successful entrepreneurs has been vain enough to write a book about their experience, right? So the books are easy to find. You can go on to Amazon, you can go to Barnes and Noble, whatever your local bookstore is. You'll find tons of books about entrepreneurial success. The books are made easy to read because the author wants to sell the book, right? So they're not going to make it difficult for you to understand. So the formula is easy to find. It's easy to understand. It's incredibly difficult to implement. But I discovered the key to that. And the key to that is taking the time before you launch to understand, what are you passionate about? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your likes? What are your dislikes? Spending all of your time as an entrepreneur on the things you like to do and you're good at doing. Understanding what you're not good at doing and you don't like to do, it's more than likely still going to have to get done. It just doesn't have to be done by you. So instead of wasting time doing stuff that you don't like doing and you're not good at doing because you're not going to do it efficiently, understand it needs to get done and outsource it immediately, right? And if you do that, you know, um, you're on a good trajectory towards success. There are other things you need to do. You need to, you know, you need to, as you're going through the self-discovery process, figuring out what you're passionate about, you know, and building a business around something you're passionate about. Because if you love what you do, when you do what you love what you do, right? And the love you have for what you do is incredibly attractive to the rest of humanity, right? So people want to be around people that they know enjoy and are happy doing what they do, right? So when you have this passion for your business, it's incredibly easy to find people to work with you, whether they be employees, co-founders, people to serve on your board, customers, suppliers. It doesn't matter. Everyone wants to be with people that they know are genuinely happy and love what they do, right? So, that's it. You have to actually take the time to find someone with a problem that you can uniquely solve, right? You need to get confirmation from whoever it is whose problem you discovered that the solution you came up with actually solves their problem. And then once you do that, they can give you all the information you need to be successful and get the second, third, fourth, fifth customer, right? You can sit there and ask them, hey, well, why did you buy this from me? How are you using it? How is it impacting your business? Oh, quantify that for me. Is it increasing your revenue and by how much? Is it reducing your cost and by how much? You know, and now that you have all of this, you have this case study of very valuable information as to how your product or service adds value to the customer you want to serve. You can go out, I know exactly who's going to use this, right? Because they're going to be probably just like the customer I already have. You know, you know how they're going to use it. You know why they're going to use it. You know how it's going to impact their business, right? And if you can tell that to someone, the process of making a sale to that person is incredibly easy.
So what do you do when you have this podcast is for a lot of small business owners and entrepreneurs and solopreneurs, this type of thing. So a lot
Yeah,
of our listeners have questions about this topic. And I think something that really comes up that I notice is
yeah,
people having ideas and then not knowing, for example, like you have an idea of a business for, I don't know, like you want to sell cookies, right? But you
yeah,
live in an area for some reason where they don't like cookies.
yeah,
People
yeah,
don't purchase cookies, and they're just not popular. Everyone eats, I don't know, salty snacks there.
yeah, yeah,
And a lot of people, I think, have this roadblock of having these things of like saying, well, I don't want to do another business. I really want to sell cookies, but I live in a place where they don't sell cookies. And so what do I do if I like realistically, I would be thinking my logic tells me relocate to a place where they do wanna buy cookies if you don't wanna do something. Um, but then that's hard, and you don't have the guarantee that if you go to this other city where they love cookies, that your cookies are going to kind of stand out, right?
yeah,
So what do
yeah.
you do in situations like this where, like, that road feels like it's I think always taking that first leap is gonna be the hardest part, and then once you're in the trenches, you're figuring it out as you go, but how do you do that, when all of these things start to present themselves? And I think a lot of the people that listen to this get like, "Well, what now?"
Yeah, well, again, so what one thing entrepreneurs need to understand is there's nothing wrong with walking away from a business, right? So if the business is not something you should be doing, you're wasting a lot of valuable time. Time is something we can never get back. Trying to pursue something that ultimately is not going to work, right? So, and the way you figure that out quickly, that or what the scenario you just described is, and this is actually very typical with entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs come up with ideas all the time. The problem is that you don't want to come up with ideas and then try to find problems, to solve with your idea. What you want to find, you want to do this the opposite way. You want to find a problem and then let that help you derive a solution, right? So, and what you just described, if someone's, selling cookies and goes out into the marketplace and there's like no one wants to buy cookies, well, that's because you know, you didn't identify a problem. The way entrepreneurship should be done, go out into the market, before you decide I want to be a cookie maker, go out into the marketplace and just talk to people and ask them what kind of problems they have, right? And then, you're going to hear about a bunch of problems and you're not going to be able to solve all of them because, y- you know, even if you could solve all of them, you're not going to enjoy solving all of them because, it's going to require you to create a product or service that you're not going to be passionate about, a lot of times. Right. But if you take the time to talk to people, find out what the problems are, you're going to end up talking to someone that, when you identify the problem, it's going to be like, okay, well, I could solve that problem this way. And I'm actually passionate about that. I like that. I would enjoy having a business where I could do that 24/7, 365. Right. So now you've done those first two critical steps in entrepreneurship of finding a problem that you can uniquely solve and then being passionate about the business you build around that product or service, you've solved those two issues, right? So, and then, once you have that business, you create that business, that's an incredibly solid foundation. Now, what do you want to do next? Now, you know, um, I want to laser focus on only serving, the customers that are defined by the customer you've identified that problem for,
Yeah.
uh, so that you gain name recognition, right? What you want to do is, and hopefully what you're doing in that process is you're finding either someone that is not being serviced, and that's why they have this issue, or they're being serviced, but they don't like the service they're getting, and that's why they have the issue. So, and at the end of the day, you're either saying, "Hey, I'm going to give you a product or service that you don't have access to," or I'm going to give you that product or service you have access to, but I'm going to service you in a way that other people aren't. That you enjoy being serviced with this product or service, right? And again, however you define that customer, this is women with freckles, right? I know, don't get this, okay, so I'm going to come up with this product that services women with freckles. What I would tell people is, you found your value proposition, just laser focus on only serving women with freckles with this product or service in the short term, right? Until you become the dominant provider of that product or service to women with freckles. Once you do that, you become known as the person selling X to women with freckles, and everyone will hear about you. And so now when you decide, okay, now I'm going to expand my market base, right? I'm going to service all women. I don't care whether they have freckles or not. Well, the women that don't have freckles more than likely will have heard of you, being the person that has this product or service just for women with freckles, right? And they're going to want to talk to you for no other reason. And it's like, well, you're the person that does this for women with freckles. I don't have freckles. Why do you want to talk to me? And you know, you take that conversation wherever you want, but the beauty of it is it's opened you up to having a conversation. Whereas normally you have a product or service, you're considered a salesperson, regardless of what your position is with your company, by someone who doesn't know who you are. And just think of how if you're at home and you get a robocall from some telemarketer, you more than likely don't pick the call up, or if you pick the call up, you hang it up pretty quickly. That's how we treat salespeople. We don't trust salespeople, right?
Yeah.
So as a business owner, you are considered a salesperson if someone doesn't know you. And so you're not going to get a good reception in most cases unless you have name recognition for what you do before you show up on their doorstep, right? And the way you do that is by laser focusing on a target market that you can become the dominant supplier to.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, salespeople get a really bad rep. And also I think, like you said, unless you have something to kind of back you up, you're regardless of what you're doing, selling the service, selling the product is going to be the first thing that you want to do. And actually getting people to purchase it and then be happy with it and then recommend it. That's like the first step. It's the hardest one, I think.
Well, the key word you just said in your sentence was service, right? I found out I started my first 11 years of my career in sales with Direct and AT&T. I became AT&T's top salesperson globally, relatively early in my career, based on what I had learned at Xerox, plus having someone in the service department befriend me at AT&T when I got hired, and showing me exactly how to do what they did, right? And then, I was already kind of playing in my mind, just like when I was at Xerox and wasn't having success. I'm like, I would go out on calls where a service person might be there with me, and the customer treated the service person very different than they treated me, right? And talked to them very different. And so I was curious about that, and I realized over time, with some maturity that, you know, service people are viewed as people that are here to help, right? And that's why customers embrace service people. Whereas salespeople, the view is you're trying to sell me something I don't need, right? And so I don't trust you. I don't want to talk to you. And so what I took from that was that sales is best done through service, right? So if you focus on servicing a customer first, the sale will happen. So you don't have to focus on the sale. You focus on the service. And again, it gets back to this whole mantra of finding a problem that you can uniquely solve. Doing that will lead to a product or service, right? Uh,
Okay. Sorry, go
well,
ahead.
no. I was pretty much at the end of the point.
No, and I also think that a lot of times, I mean, I'm not a business owner, so I'm really just speaking out of what I notice.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
if I'm talking out of my ass, feel free to
yeah, yeah,
correct
yeah.
me.
Well, even if you're not a business owner, you buy from businesses, right?
Yeah,
So you have a unique and valuable perspective because even
as
if
a
you don't own a
consumer,
business, you purchase from
yeah.
businesses, and so you see what's going on, right?
I feel like sometimes, when I see like new businesses trying to kind of put their name out there in a market, I think with B2B, right, is a bit different because you're talking to someone who is like their market is another business,
Yeah,
corporations, but at least as a consumer, like as a normal person that's just walking down the street and they're selling me mundane services and things that I'm going to be using on my daily life.
yeah,
What I feel, is sometimes that business struggle to make me feel like their product is worthwhile my time. Not I don't mind someone coming to sell me because I can appreciate the hustle in
yeah,
a way. I'm
yeah,
like, I'm the type of person that I'm like, you know what, you wanna get your thing going. Like I can respect that. And if you have something that's worth my time, then I will help you out.
yeah,
And also because I know that a lot of these small business owners are people that are struggling, that are, like, and I want to support the local business and whatnot. But
yeah,
I sometimes feel like I feel a disconnect when the product, I think, should speak for itself a little bit, the
yeah,
service should speak for itself a little bit,
yeah, yeah,
and a lot of times it feels like I feel like businesses are selling incomplete stuff,
yeah,
especially with software. I feel like I get pushed a lot of apps, a lot of, like, stuff like this, but it's always in the works, and they're already putting it out in the market,
yeah,
and you have to pay for it, and then it makes me feel like, "Why would I pay for something that is not yet perfected?" And I
right.
understand the financial side because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, well, probably these people have, like, deadlines and stuff that they wanna meet, so they're just trying to sell it to make money and make it better."
Yeah,
But I feel like sometimes that's where my disconnect comes in as a consumer, which is how good or how much time does your product feel? Because I feel like all of these techniques are only gonna be worth it if your product and your service are actually speaking to me as a consumer, right?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Like you said, I think, like, the sale would happen by itself if I genuinely believed in the products and the services, and I sometimes don't, and I think that that sucks, but I do think that if you have something that is genuinely solving a problem and genuinely helping me, I'm not gonna need convincing, you
yeah,
know? I'm
yeah,
just gonna be like, "Yeah, give it to me."
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, so I mean, an entrepreneur should understand that their product or service is never going to be perfect. One, and they should not wait until they try to perfect it before they introduce it to the marketplace, right? So
I don't know, of course.
the computer software industry is actually a really good analogy of how businesses should iterate their product because with software development, right? You come up with you identify a problem, right? And you come up with a solution. You create software that does X. Uh, it's not perfect, but it's good enough, right? So you introduce it to the marketplace, and the way it gets better is through versions, right? So you have version one, version two, and that's all related to customer feedback. So you put the product out there, it's not perfect, but you're asking customers for feedback constantly, right? And customers are telling you, hey, well, it'd be nice if it had this. I don't like this, whatever. And so you say, okay, well, now we're coming out with version one, the initial design, let's say was version one. We're coming out with version, two or 1.1, and we're going to make some of these changes, right? And then what do you guys think about that? Oh, okay, this is better. All right, but you still some changes, additional changes you want to make. All right, we're going to do version 3 or 1.2, and it's going to incorporate some of these, and you keep doing that, right? Until that product has its, natural shelf life, and then you come up with some completely new product that, you know, makes that product look, it's like, I can't believe I ever used that product.
Yeah, and I think that happens with social media apps when I think of when I started using them, like when Instagram got introduced. It was so different than
Oof.
what it is now. I think with new social media apps, it's a little bit different because we're in a different place technologically,
Yeah.
where apps, people are a little bit more equipped to create stuff like this. But when you think of Facebook, Instagram, like the older social media um, platforms, and they've changed so much. The new iterations with positive and negative feedback for certain things. So like you said, I think where what I mean is that sometimes I feel like I guess there's a fine line between
Mhm.
making sure that your product is ready to be put out, even if
Mhm.
it's not perfect,
Yeah. Yeah.
and knowing when it's best to keep it. Because I've been like I remember someone promoting this app for, like, shopping.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was kind of like the module was like a swipe type of thing, like, as
Mhm.
if it were like a dating app, except instead of dating, you're shopping for clothes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I thought it was a really creative idea, and
Right.
I downloaded the app, but the app was so glitchy that
Yeah.
it was impossible to use, and I felt like, you have a great thing, but you also have clearly not made it
Yeah.
you haven't gotten to a place where this is able to be used because there's way too many glitches, and I felt
Yeah.
like this probably needed a little bit more time in the lab because the idea was good, but
Yeah.
the execution was still not there yet.
Yeah. 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 So you can't
Yeah.
introduce any product, and there'll be so many problems that you can't physically use it, right? So you don't want to introduce. You don't want to wait until you think the product is perfect, but you do want, it does have to be usable, right? And then you can, and then again, it's part of the process of getting towards success is um, transitioning customers from kind of the normal customer experience to points where they become evangelists for your brand, right?
Yeah.
And the example I always use with people, it's like, assume you're a parent and you have a young daughter who decides she wants to be in the Girl Scouts, and now she's selling Girl Scout cookies. It's like when she has her first box of cookies to sell, who is she going to go to make that sale? I'll answer the question for you. Her parents, right? Why? Because they have a relationship with her. They have a vested interest in seeing her succeed. They don't want to see her fail. They'll buy as many cookie boxes of cookies as she sells them, or she shows to them. So as an entrepreneur, what you want to do, you want to replicate that experience, or whatever you want to call it. That relationship. You want to view yourself, the entrepreneur, as the Girl Scout. And so your customer, how could I transform my customer into being like my parent and me being their child who's the Girl Scout? How do I get them to have a vested interest in my success? How do I get them to not want to see me fail? How do I get them to buy everything I have for the duration of the life of my business and refer me to everyone they know, right? So what can I do in my business to create that kind of a relationship with every customer I serve? You know, and then I'll tell them about experience I had when I came out of college. I moved to Yonkers, New York, and my family's from New York, and so I'm working for Xerox, and you know, you know, any given day, I got to get something to eat. So, I tend to like Italian food, and so there was this Italian restaurant in the center of Yonkers downtown, and I would go there, and I didn't want to eat inside the restaurant because it was a hole in the wall. But I went there once, ordered something, took it home, ate it, and I'm like, oh my God, this is fantastic. I love lasagna, so it was probably love the lasagna. But I eat it, and I'm like, man, this is fantastic. This is some of the best lasagna I've ever tasted. you know. And when I went in there, I remember having a conversation with the owner, right? brief conversation. And so I told him my name and, I don't know what he asked me. But the fact that this was, really good food, there was a couple things. The food was great. He gave me more than I could eat in a meal. And I'm, probably 21 years old and I was an athlete. So I could eat a lot. But he gave me more than I could eat in a meal. And then he didn't charge me much of anything for what I had ordered. Right. So, so I'm like, next time I felt like eating Italian food, I go back to the same restaurant. Now I walk in, "Hey, Jeff, how's it going?" I'm like, "I don't remember your name. How do you remember mine?" And then he's pulling up, whatever we talked about, "Hey, how's this person doing? What happened with this situation?" I'm like, "How do you remember, this conversation?" But now here's all, here's so you can imagine how good I felt, walking into that restaurant, having that conversation with him. So he remembers his customers, remembers the conversations he has with customers. Um, you know,
Makes you feel at home,
yeah,
basically.
yeah, great food, more than you can eat at a price you can afford. You know, it's like I lived in Yonkers for probably like 9 years. Whenever I wanted Italian food, that was the only place I went. I didn't step foot in any other Italian restaurant in the entire city of Yonkers in the 9 years I lived there. Right.
Nice.
So that's so. How do you, as a business owner, create that kind of experience for your customers so that however long they live in your town, that you're the only place they come to buy from, right? It's doing those types of things, right? Give them something at a price that they can afford. Give them, whatever it is you give them, make it great, right? So better than anything they've ever experienced, right? With that particular product or service. Remember, engage them in conversation. Remember who they are. Remember what they tell you. Build a relationship with them, right?
I think also you get potentially nostalgic people who come back and then they're like, "Oh, I really miss X's burgers," and then they'll
Yeah,
run to your place and like
yeah,
or like,
yeah,
when you hear about, "Oh, I'm going to this town," and then that person will be like, "Oh my gosh, you have to try this restaurant."
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I'm going with the restaurant analogy, but
Yeah.
with any
No, no,
service.
I mean, well, it's powerful. I walk people through because I teach on alignable.com every other week, and one of the lessons that I do, talks about transforming customers into evangelists, and so I kind of I walk them through how you do this, and I always tell them everyone's loyal to something, and has been for an extended period of time. It could be you know, I only buy Ford cars, I only buy Saab cars, or I only use this toothpaste, or you know, whatever the case may be. But there's some brand, there's some company, there's some product or service that you buy all the time. You've bought for more than a decade, so when you're buying that particular product or service, you're only buying it from that one brand, right? And so I always tell entrepreneurs, okay, well, if you want to understand how to transform a customer into an evangelist, think of that thing, that brand, that whatever it is that you've been incredibly loyal to. Now I want you to sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil. I want you to jot down as many things. Can you still hear me?
Yes. Think you're frozen.
Yeah, something in here.
Okay, guys, Geoffrey, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. We had a great conversation. I think we talked about a lot of great things that entrepreneurs can learn about. But before we finish, I do want to give you the space to plug anything, promote anything. This is the moment. If anything that we spoke about resonated with our audience, the space is yours to plug.
Yeah, yeah. I really don't have much to plug. I try my best to help entrepreneurs. So, if you're brave enough to do what I've built a career doing, I want to help you in any way I can. So, I will give you my website, which is www.thinkbig with Geoffrey Kent. Geoffrey is the old English spelling, Geoffrey, .com, if I didn't say that. Uh, Also, I spend a lot of time on alignable.com. And I have a group that I formed called Entrepreneurial University, where every week I have events where I have people in the group meet each other. So it's a platform just for Alignable. If you don't know what it is, it's a platform just for entrepreneurs. And then on top of that, I do a 6-part teaching series on how you take a business from nothing, exponentially scaling it to a desired exit, and through that exit, securing your individual future, creating generational wealth for your family. Right. So that series is taught every other week, but it's all of this is done in my Entrepreneurial University group, and it's all free. So for any entrepreneur that wants to experience any of this, I also post every day. I post content, usually questions, sometimes thought-provoking, information on how to do something entrepreneurially in your business. But I do that every single day in the group as well. So, anyone can go to alignable.com. You get a free membership. You don't have to pay. And once you get a membership, just search for groups and search for Entrepreneurial University and groups and join the group. And then you can participate in all of this as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I will be adding the links to all of these things on the description of this video so that everybody can easily find them.
All right.
Geoffrey, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. Guys, subscribe to our YouTube channel, listen to our podcast, do everything to help us out. And thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much for having me. This was a pleasure.
It's a pleasure having you as well. Guys, I will see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend, and of course, subscribe.